Hello, my name is Voya and welcome to My Deep Guide, and today we are checking out in-depth review of the Boox Note Air 5C, the latest installment and iteration of their highly successful 10.3-inch e-note taking devices. So first, let's start with the design and the build quality. We have the same exact housing as we've had before with the Note Air devices, which is not a bad thing at all. And I think that the design itself is aging quite nicely. The additions and changes include a pogo pin on the back, and we have volume buttons here on the side that can also be used as page turning buttons. They've also introduced a brand new pen. The brand new pen looks very pretty, but it has some design issues, not as far as ergonomics go. As far as ergonomics go, it's a really nice and comfortable pen. It has a magnetically held cap. It also has a lapel holder. This holder catches everything wherever you use it, and the magnet is not strong enough to kind of hold it for regular things. So this cap continuously in normal day-to-day use basically just keeps going off and off and off. It holds 3 extra nibs there, and that's the whole purpose of that cap. Introduction of that cap also introduces the major problem of this pen, and that is that in relation to where the positioning of the magnets are in this pen compared to the old pen, makes it so that when it's placed where it needs to be, where the magnets want it to be, it is pressing on the volume button. The volume button that also doubles as a page turn button, and the button that cannot be turned off anywhere in the system. That means effectively that you cannot use this pen in a place where it's been designed to be used. You will need to place it in the weaker spot, like underneath here, and the problem with that is that it barely holds the pen. Boox themselves are trying to gaslight users, reviewers, and everybody else and tell you like, oh no, you don't know where to place the pen because this is where you need to place it. Don't be fooled, because I've made measurements and I've measured in my previous video. It's a cock-up. They're not owning up to it, and until they own up, that's it. Can you turn it around? Yes, you can. It's still going to press on the button, as you can see. If you press it down here, it's still weakly held by these magnets down there. So what is your solution? Either use it down here, in which case it's going to continuously fall off. Use it without the cap, but then take off these things, and then it functions actually pretty much perfectly, no interference whatsoever. The only thing is that it looks ugly, nothing other than that. Or alternatively, use a different pen that actually works with this device, and I've tested it, and my pen that I choose to use is Kindle Scribe Premium pen. As you can see, it has this indentation in here, which fits perfectly right here. So while it does touch the button, it has that indentation that actually allows it not to press the button when you put it right there. However, that doesn't entirely eliminate the problem, because you will still maybe end up in a situation where that button can get pressed by some slight pressure exertion over here. So your best bet is to shop around and find for a shorter pen that actually can fit this normally. Either way, that situation with the volume buttons introduces quite a bit of completely unnecessary complications to what is otherwise something that could have been an absolutely freaking phenomenal device. So how does Note Air 5C actually fare as a tablet? Well, it brings quite a few important things to the table, most notable of which will be the Android 15. For the first time ever, you have a Boox device that is contemporary and it's up to date as far as the Android versions go. That hopefully marks a important shift in Boox's logic in which types of SoCs they will use. SoC used here is an octa-core as well, but it has, 4 cores at 2 gigahertz and 4 cores at, I believe, 2.2 gigahertz or 2.1, which some of you will definitely note is a stark difference to, let's say, Note Air 3C, which had an SoC with a higher clock. But don't forget, this is a more modern, more efficient type of an SoC, so I don't think that you're going to be seeing differences in that regards at all. So I think that that is a good thing to see. 6 gigs of RAM, 64 gigs of storage, micro SD card slot, all of the stuff really, really good. But then you kind of take a look at the Palma 2 Pro, and that thing has 8 gigs of RAM, and then you kind of wonder, well, why? Why not on this thing as well? Kind of strange. As an e-reader, mostly it works exceptionally well. The screen itself and how the screen is being handled, the deghosting methods are pretty much the same as the ones used in the Tab XC, which means that we have some of the best deghosting performance and color image performance that we've had on any of Boox color devices before. Is it the best overall color performance? Not quite. I've had the opportunity to actually use the eNote Pro, I believe it's called, from Penstar, and that has noticeably better or more pleasant image quality than the Note Air 5C, but nowhere near the same level of speed and deghosting performance. So you gotta kind of make a trade somewhere along the way. And also don't forget that, Note Air 5C has a paper-like film on top, or the treatment of glass on top, which will introduce slight image degradation, while the eNote doesn't have. So when you're writing on the eNote Pro, it feels like writing on smooth glass. When you're writing on the Note Air 5C, it feels really, really pleasant. And while we're talking about writing, well, let's go to the writing experience. And the writing experience on the Note Air 5C is really, really good. It remains exceptionally good as it was on the Note Air 4C and Note Air 3C, and generally on the Note Air series. But starting from the Note Air 3C, they introduced that thinner, stronger glass that's a little bit flexible, but much, much kind of nicer feel because it has a give and it's not as hard feeling when you're writing on it. And that has stayed as part of the design through 4C and thankfully on the 5C, which means writing quality, writing experience, writing comfort, exceptionally good on the Note Air 5C. Boox OS 4.1 has introduced a couple of new pens as well, amongst which the fountain pen is the one that I actually like how it works. And it's fairly sensitive and in a good way, so it can capture nuances, fine nuances of your writing, and overall it feels good and it looks good while writing, so it's a very, very satisfying writing experience overall. Couple that with the enormous amount of functionality and power that you have in notebooks on typical Boox platform. So you can have audio recordings, you can insert images, insert shape, fill those shapes, you can insert text boxes, you can make links to documents, to other notebooks or other web pages if you want. You can insert headings or titles and create like a table of content on the notebooks. You can import complex hyperlinked PDF documents like MDO, for example, that you can find on mydeepguide.com/shop. MDO 2026 is available, so you can head on over and purchase that. And then you can just import it as a notebook into the Note Air 5C and enjoy all of the power that a notebook has to offer and the hyperlink functionality of a powerful document like an MDO. And then on top of it all, you have full-on Google Play enabled store, fully functional, works really well. You can have it as a browser, and because of the deghosting performance, you can even watch some videos. I really don't recommend it because you're gonna spend the screen really, really quickly. So that's why I'm not even showing examples of that, because I do not want to condone that or inspire that type of use case scenario, because that would be bad for your device. But your regular browsing, social networking, reading, writing, app working, you can even screencast to it, use it as an external monitor if you will. You can install any app that you want and then, I don't know, use it as a terminal view and type from terminal. It has a Bluetooth, so you can connect any keyboard that you want. More on that a little bit later though. So you have tons and tons of functionalities in this small and portable, really powerful format. So this was always the strong point of the Note Air series. Throughout 1, 2, all of them, all through here. And one of the important parts, for me at least, about the Note Air series was that it was always very, very reliable. So what it offered, it did those things really well. This is the first time in the Note Air series when I was going through my standardized series of testing the device and using the device, same stuff that I'm using all the time for all of the devices, that I started to encounter issue after issue. Some are hardware, as I mentioned, with the button itself, but most of them are software related, and that comes down to the Boox OS 4.1, which is the starting point of this device, and that is very unfortunate, because Boox OS 4.1 is an absolute travesty of what it has done to the platform overall. To begin with, the platform was not great, but OS 4.1, good lord, it just made things so much worse. So in a sense, Note Air 5C from the software side of things never had a chance because that was its starting point. And what are the manifestations that I've experienced? Well, manifestations are random app shutdowns or even completely reproducible problems with NeoReader and documents that always have worked and continually work on other devices. Yep, on the Note Air 5C and the Palma 2 Pro, for example, yep, nope, they will crash on the very same page, exactly the same page for whatever reason, but every other device, nope, doesn't have that problem at all and can work normally. Or menus that simply just, decide to, nope, you've been looking at me long enough, I'm gonna close myself down, and a huge bunch of really random type of bugs. Boox OS 4.1 was and is nowhere near ready for a public official release. This was a rushed job, it feels like it, and it performs like it, unfortunately. So, if you're an early adopter, you need to really be prepared for very serious teething issues that the Boox OS 4.1 completely unnecessarily introduces to the platform, and unfortunately in this case to the Note Air 5C. I think that the OS 4.1 is the single biggest negative point that I can attribute to this otherwise potentially phenomenal device. Because don't forget that under the Boox OS 4.1 and the volume button thing issue with the pen lies an incredibly powerful and capable device. Some of the best deghosting performance and cleanest image performance, tons of really good stuff there. But what good is it if you have a handful of continuous things that keep ruining the experience? And unfortunately, that's what kept happening with the Note Air 5C in my time when I was actually testing it. Another thing that has finally been improved with the Note Air 5C is that the new cover has a hole for the USB-C. We haven't had that ever, right? So that was always the problem, that you couldn't charge the device while it was in the cover. So hooray, correct? Well, yes, if you're using this cover, hooray, and it still has the origami type of design, so you can have it in a portrait and landscape or landscape stand format, which is great. But remember that pogo thing? Well, this time they've released a keyboard magnetic folio as well for the Note Air 5C. So let's take a brief look at that as well. And it looks like this. It too has this pointless flap, but they've taken the criticisms that I've had with the magnetic keyboard cover for the Tab XC and the Note Max series quite seriously, and you can see that they've introduced modifications so that the keyboard itself no longer directly impacts the screen and damages your device, which was the case with the Note Max and the Tab XC keyboard cover. So that is really good. But can you tell me if you see if something is missing on the keyboard cover Maybe a charging hole that we have on this one, but we don't have on this one? Are you kidding me? How do you miss that? How do you do it on this and then not do it on this? Why? Overall, it fits okay. So you slot your device in, it holds it okay, and the pogo connection is fine, and it can be held only in one place. You don't have any modifications to have the angle of the device itself. The keyboard itself is, small format, yes, has decent travel, but it has a very firm and not so pleasant type of a feel of typing. It feels way cheaper than what the price actually commands. As a whole package, this thing turns out to be very massive, and there's an additional issue where you see how, it actually protrudes on the outside, and then you have to put your pen not in that position, but in the smaller position so that you don't push the button, and then this whole thing moves, and it moves the pen. Really? So logically, what I would say is like, well, what's the point of it? Because you do have Bluetooth and you can use any keyboard that you want. Most importantly, you can use keyboard layout or anything that you want that's Bluetooth. And traditionally, it all worked always absolutely perfectly with the Note Air devices, and in fact, any devices. So I hooked up my Logitech Keys to Go keyboard that works absolutely flawlessly on any device that I've ever tested so far until the Note Air 5C, because I started to have really strange issues with it. First, it couldn't connect correctly. Then it wouldn't accept the typed in numerical code. It would say like, hey, it's a wrong code. And even when I managed to actually connect it, it wouldn't be able to hold on the connections securely for more than a couple of seconds, and then it would remain stuck, and it would just keep stuck keys completely, and it kept connecting, disconnecting, connecting, disconnecting. And that meant that my initial idea of why would you use this keyboard cover when you can use any Bluetooth keyboard, unfortunately, for me at least, it proved to be not true with the Note Air 5C, because I tried other Bluetooth keyboards that I have and other Bluetooth keyboards that I know 100% that work absolutely flawlessly with other devices. Without a fail, they all exhibited the same problems with the Note Air 5C. Dropping out connection, not reliable, and not good at all. That's a downgrade. All right, so that's the overview of the Boox Note Air 5C. Now the next section of the video is going to be my display analysis framework test results of the display image quality and writing performance and all of that kind of stuff. So for those who are interested, enjoy. And if you are not interested in super in-depth kind of look at the performance of this device, well, then I invite you to head on over to the conclusion or final thoughts chapter. We start with the readability portion of the DAF test, where we check out the precision, definition, and sharpness of the characters rendered on this device. And we can see that rendering standard fonts at 100% blackness, 70% blackness, and 50% blackness across the font sizes, it is performing quite well. And in fact, it seems to me, especially at 50% blackness with the thin fonts, that it's holding a really good definition when compared to Note Air 3C. So we will see that in the end, how they actually compare. We can see pretty much excellent performance with the large thin fonts, quite good performance with the normal sized fonts, and quite a lot of readability and clarity left, even at 6 fonts, which is a difficult thing for a Kaleido panel to achieve. Even when we step down to the thinness of 50%, the smallest thin fonts are not losing cohesion. Thick fonts are rendered okay, but at the small size we can see that they're becoming way less defined and a lot more blobby. This is improved naturally when we step down to 50% of blackness, but yeah, the 100% of blackness kinda blobby. Proceeding with the contrast and uniformity portion of test, where we are measuring the rendering of pure white and black colors of the device in excellent lighting conditions at 4000 lux, average lighting conditions 750 lux, and poor lighting conditions 125 lux. All three are set at 5000 Kelvin. The display portion of test is, which is what you're checking out now. The shutter speed of the camera exactly compensates the difference in lighting so that we can expose any differences in uniformity and consistency of the display. And the observable one is actually the most meaningful one because it actually shows what you're gonna observe or see in reality under these lighting conditions. And we can see that it's holding its consistency fairly well in white colors, so very, very nice performance there, and it actually maintains that consistency fairly well in the black rendering as well. In the observable portion of the test, we can see that it's darkening very, very significantly, which is to be expected of a Kaleido panel because they are naturally darker, and the rendering of black colors, yeah, already from the average lighting conditions, you are gonna stop seeing those artifacts in the black portion of the content on the screen. With the front lights set at 50%, we can see that only in the poor lighting conditions we start to have an exaggeration of artifacts here. What you're going to be able to observe is actually fairly good and balanced performance. While the front light is not exactly balancing out what you're going to see between average and poor at 50%, it's far closer than, of course, without the front light. But most importantly, it's not really interfering with the rendering of the black colors that much. When we raise the front light to 100%, the display portion, yeah, basically shows that the calibration of the intensity of the front light is fairly extreme, and now we get to have full-on exposure of the what the display is actually like in the black colors, which is unusual and shows that the intensity of 100% is simply way too high. And in the observable portion of test, we finally get to see the equalization and almost a little bit actually better, brighter image in average lighting conditions with the front light 100 than in the excellent lighting conditions. Unfortunately, the poor lighting conditions show that, that intensity of 100% is way too overblown, with the whites completely overblown and black color, basically washed out completely. Color accuracy rendering is to be expected. It's on par. It seems a little bit weaker than what I normally see, but it's fairly equalized. So we have red at 395, green at 376, and blue, of course, strongest because that's the strongest point of Kaleido screens. They are most accurate with the blue color. When we put the front light to 50%, we see that there's very little change in all of them. So yeah, it's not really helping or taking away from the accuracy of color rendering. But when we put the front light to 100%, that intensity of 100% of that front light is washing out the greens and the blues considerably, but it's brightening up the reds and actually increases the accuracy of the red color rendering, because normally it's way too dark and therefore it's off the color accuracy. So when it's fully illuminated, it becomes a little bit more red. Reflectivity of the screen surface is quite good. So we have excellent sharpness diffusion. As we can see, we don't really have super sharp edges at all. So the sharp edge is diffused in a nice way. And the intensity is okay. Ghosting performance is quite good, actually really, really good, with the text being extremely clean in the HD refresh method. Graphics naturally are quite messy, but when we have combined text and graphics, Note Air 5C is able to deghost this in a good manner. When we switch to speed refresh method, that's when Note Air 5C will employ the BSR. We can see that text remains really well deghosted. Deghosting performance on the graphics content is way, way more improved, and the combined remains fairly similar, but slightly improved to what we had in the HD mode. Surface roughness is quite good, although I'm gonna have to check in the comparisons, but I think that Note Air 3C had a higher RA value. The profile curve is excellent, as it was on the 3C, because we have really healthy differentiation between the peaks and the valleys. And the valleys are nice and round, peaks are nice and sharp, and we also have a healthy distance between highest of the peaks to allow for the tip of the nib to go up and down and transfer to us that feeling of paper-like type of roughness. And when we inspect the curvature of the front light intensity curve, we can see that differentiation between from 50% to 100%. It's such a huge difference, because we have 2 lux at 30%, 9 lux at 50%, then it suddenly starts spiking up to 60 lux at 75% intensity and 342 lux of illuminance at 100%, which is completely unnecessary. Just for a reference point, like normal kind of peaks here should be at about 150, 120. You really don't need over 150 lux on any of these devices. That can be a little bit problematic, because then you lose quite a bit of granularity between, the last 25% of the intensity. We're going from 60 to 342, and we're going to have only a handful of steps here, which means that each one of them is going to be a really big change in intensity. So yeah, that calibration is not that great. Checking out the front light color temperature curvature, this is at 100%. We can see that when it's fully cold, it's 2644, 6250 at middle. That may be a little bit too cold for some, but it's neutral enough. And then fully warm, we have 3682 kelvins. Refresh time is okay, nothing really spectacularly fast or spectacularly slow, with 371.2 milliseconds in HD mode that it takes it to fully clear up a mixed content page, and that goes down to 225.23 milliseconds in speed mode. Again, the same thing, going from a mixed content page to a fully blank page. Surface to content distance is a very standard and expected 1.0 millimeters distance. And writing latency on the Note Air 5C has actually improved slightly from the Note Air 3C generation, and I believe a little bit better than the 4C. Nothing really revolutionary, but at sub 20 milliseconds, it's plenty fast enough. And finally, let's see how these results actually stack up against the Note Air 3C. I don't have the results for the Note Air 4C because I didn't have it in my possession by the time that I developed this DAF methodology, but I do have results from the 3C. So blue is Note Air 5C, orange is Note Air 3C. And when we compare the readability, we can actually see the generational jump between the 3C and the 5C, and it's observably and measurably improved and better readability on the 5C than it is on the 3C. Contrast and uniformity, surprisingly, it's a little bit lower than what we've had on the Note Air 3C. And that is almost across the board with the displayed visual score and the observable visual score. We have a consistent difference, especially in the observable score. So the Note Air 3C will appear brighter than the Note Air 5C when you're using it in the same lighting conditions. As far as the consistency and the quality of the panels go, they are very similar. We have some marginal differences here in the display portion of the display consistency score, but yeah, in the observable one, it's as close as, and these are things that you won't be able to actually see in reality. As far as color accuracy goes, well, surprisingly, Note Air 3C and the older display was performing better in red and in blue, considerably in both of them, with the green score ever so slightly better, almost exactly the same, but that amounts to, yeah, overall better color accuracy on the Note Air 3C. And a similar story continues with the reflectivity as well. Although the difference is really small, we do have ever so slightly better diffusion of sharpness of reflections on the 3C and, well, tiny bit of a difference in the reflectivity intensity here, but that amounts to a slight advantage in reflectivity for the Note Air 3C over 5C. Ghosting is where 5C and the modern technology actually shows its head, where it basically outperforms 3C quite considerably, almost twice as good than the ghosting performance of the 3C. I know that this graph is a little bit confusing to some, but this is the maximum intensity front light of the Note Air 3C, and you can see that it was maxing out at 161 lux versus the 342 lux that we have of the Note Air 5C. There's really no excuse why that device would go basically more than twice as high in intensity. As far as surface roughness differentiation goes, well, Note Air 3C is measurably, and you can feel the difference, that it feels ever so slightly more pleasant to write on and more paper-like. And we can see that it had 0.75 RA versus 0.63 and in better RASD as well scores. So Note Air 3C had a more paper-like writing feel than the Note Air 5C. Refresh time, we have higher is better. We can actually see surprisingly that Note Air 3C was performing better. So it had better refresh times, but I want to kind of remind you about the deghosting performance. So yes, it was faster at the expense of being considerably more messier display, where the 5C is performing twice as good in deghosting performance at an ever so slightly lower refresh time speeds. Writing latency has been slightly improved on the Note Air 5C. Both 3C and 5C are sub 20 millisecond average, which is excellent, but we have an improvement from 17.54 milliseconds on the 3C down to 15.85 milliseconds on the 5C. Not something that you're gonna be able to actually see or feel as a difference, but it's nice that it's there. Surface to content distance is exactly the same on both of the devices. And in the battery life, this is where we see the advantage of a much newer SoC, much more improved BSR implementation, and in the reading performance with the front light off, you can expect up to 45 hours of continuous reading time and flipping pages every 20 seconds on the Note Air 5C versus 14.28 hours on the 3C. With the front light set to average, we have 25 hours of expected battery life on the 5C versus the same 14.28 on the 3C. And with the front light set to 100%, yes, we have 7.14 hours versus 8.33 on the 3C, but you got to remember that intensity curve of the front light, which is absurdly high, and basically, yeah, the 5C battery levels are competing with the front light that is less than half of the intensity value where they are running at. So that's an important consideration to keep here. As far as the writing battery life, we have a very similar kind of performance. With the front light off, the 5C has a slight advantage at 8.33 hours of continuous writing per charge versus 769. But as soon as we employ that front light at 50%, we have Note Air 3C taking an advantage here and maintaining that advantage at full intensity front light, which is to be expected because of, yeah, before mentioned intensity maximum on the 5C. So how do their totals stack up in general? Well, Note Air 5C in general outperforms Note Air 3C overall with the general score of 54.81 versus 50.88. It's worth noting that pretty much in all of the categories where weighing of different tests is done differently. So as an e-reader, it outperforms Note Air 3C. As an e-notebook, it's much closer, but still outperforms it. And as an eTablet, it also outperforms it. But as we've seen in the granularity of these different categories here, it's not really such a clear-cut picture that 5C is just better than 3C. That's why the granularity of the display analysis framework exists, to show you where are the strengths, where are the weaknesses, and what is important to you. Final thoughts about the Note Air 5C. I am a huge fan of the Note Air series. I loved it when it came out. I had Note Air 1 and I loved that device to bits. Then I replaced it with the Note Air 3C and I had that all up until about a month ago when I sold it. So I have a positive bias towards Note Air series. This is the first time ever that I've encountered a Boox Note Air device from the Note Air series that I would regret that I would need to pass on this device because its potential is absolutely phenomenal. You cannot ignore how powerful and how capable this device can be. But the key word here is can be. It not always is. And that is a huge problem for me personally. I need devices like this to serve a purpose, to be a working tool, and that when I reach towards them, that they work all of the time. And that was my experience with the Note Air 3C. Day in, day out, using it in so many different types of situations, not once did I have any issues, any faults with that device. This issue after issue after issue after issue. And the problem for me with this is that the potential of it remains locked behind these issues and limitations and oversights that have been completely unnecessarily introduced to something that could have been and should have been the absolute best what you can buy on the market today and the best value that you could get on the market today. But unfortunately, because of these issues that I've talked about today, I simply cannot say that it is that. The volume button thing in a pen, sure, you can get another pen and maybe find a solution to that. Good, you're good to go. What are you going to do about the Bluetooth issues? What are you going to do about the OS 4.1 issues? There's nothing you can do. And that is a very real problem with this platform. Hopefully, updates in the future can resolve these issues, but we've seen it in the past where Boox commits to user interface and user experience changes for the better or worse, and this wouldn't be the first time where they made the platform obviously worse and stuck to it and then just kept that change until they sometime in the future decide to change it yet again and make it maybe better, maybe worse. I don't know. But those are all potentials and maybes and ifs. Your hard-earned money is going to something that is. And currently, Note Air 5C is not as good as the Note Air 4C or the 3C. Let me know in the comments down below what are your thoughts and what is your experience with the Note Air 5C. Are you experiencing some of these issues that I've been talking about? Or are you affected by these issues at all? Maybe you have them, but maybe they don't affect you. Have you tried a Bluetooth keyboard and are you having a secure connection or not? Have you managed to find an alternative pen that doesn't interfere with the button? And if so, please do put in the recommendation down below so that other users can enjoy that type of use as well. And also do let me know in the comments down below what are your thoughts about the Note Air 5C as well. My own personal final thoughts about it is that it makes me very sad because it's so close to being probably one of the best devices that I've tested, but it falls short so severely in some of these things, yet those are basically deal breakers for me. If it's gonna keep crashing in documents and be unstable and I can't use Bluetooth connectivity and have a stable Bluetooth connection to it, I can't use it in my workflow. So maybe these things don't apply to you at all, and if so, then you are able to end up with something that's really, really good already as it is. I really hope that Boox takes this criticism seriously and implements the fixes that should have been in place on the launch date for the Note Air 5C so that it's offered to the public as a complete finished product and not as something that feels still in progress. That's it from me. I hope that you liked the video. If you did, please like and subscribe and ding the notification bell to get notified when new videos come out on my deep guide. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you in the next video. Bye!